Okay, I wanted to get a little further away from the road for this video. This is my Suzuki Boulevard 2007 M50. I wanted to focus on a few things I did this year to improve my riding experience. The most obvious thing is this windscreen. Never did like the idea of a windscreen, especially one that's stuck up really high, but from the seated position, you know, it's not very high and you don't have a lot of obstruction in terms of your view. You can almost ignore it. It does substantially reduce the amount of wind that hits you directly in the chest. I wear a helmet, and it's a different kind of wind noise that you get in the helmet, so I'm figuring out maybe I can put something in here to stiffen this up, so maybe it doesn't have that tiny little bit of vibration. There's not much vibration, very much at all. This is DennisKirk.com V-Stream. You put in your make and model and you get this particular windscreen. The other thing I did this year is I worked out a way to attach my fishing rod. And I always hated having to choose between riding the motorcycle and going fishing. So, you know, this is pretty simple here because this just sits right on the passenger footrest. Zip ties are cheap. I'll just cut that off with nail clippers. And up front here, on this hose coming off of the radiator, there's a small clip and there's a thread tapping in this down tube, and that's a 10 millimeter thread at the 1.25 pitch. Well, I just got a bolt that was longer and put a nut down inside here that's a jam nut, and then a little bit of rubber fuel line hose, 3/8 diameter, with this 10 millimeter bolt and these large fender washers. And then of course I zip tied it on there, and that just rests directly on there. And as you can see, looking down the bike, it rides in between your leg when your foot's on the rest here and the bike itself. It's got enough clearance that it doesn't touch this side panel, and it allows me to bring my tackle bag along and take the bike to the fishing destination rather than having to choose between riding and fishing. Just didn't want to have something that was sticking up straight up in the air, and I'm not a big fan of telescopic fishing rods, so this is a one-piece rod, and I wanted to figure out a way to do this. I'd done it on a smaller bike, but this bike's a little wider in its body, so it makes it more difficult to run something along the side. But I finally figured out a path, and I didn't have to do anything in terms of making any special fabricated materials. These are all off-the-shelf items, and this tapping in the down tube by the radiator is already there. So the bracket's still holding the hose in place, and it's holding the fishing rod firm and secure. I've been out riding with it all day to test it, and it's worked out really well. The third thing that I did this year is this final drive back here. If anybody out there that already has an M50, you know that these are usually black. That's because they paint them black, but this particular drive is the DJ drive, and I've taken this thing out and tried it out because this is the final drive off of a 1400. There is a Suzuki forum. I can put a link in the description on how they do this, and it does require some machining of the original 800 drive shaft and the spacer bushing that goes for the axle. And then of course these three bolts right here on this hub, they had to be slotted. The holes had to be slotted to accommodate the larger drive. And then I left the fake swing arm off. I don't really care about that kind of thing. I care more about how it rides, and I care more about how it looks from the driver's seat, not so much how it looks from the car sitting next to me, you know. So I don't really care about that fake swing arm. It's not really necessary, and I didn't put it back on. It would require some special modifications to make that work anyway. But if you have any questions, I'm going to try to put as many links as I can in as far as like how to get that drive made up. There's a link on a Suzuki forum. You got to read everything. Read all of the comments, because some of the information isn't till further down. But I'll throw that in there, and maybe I'll put a link in the description for this this windscreen. And you can decide if it's worth putting on your bike. And then of course the fishing rod, these are off-the-shelf items. These are things that, that you don't have to have specially made up. And like I said, I've been out all day on this, and it has held on there just fine with no issues. And I don't think I need to put a link in the description for that, because it's probably a 60 millimeter long bolt, 10 millimeter with that 1.25 thread pitch. And of course I just saved the original bolt and put it in the saddlebag with a wrench, so that if I want to take that off and I don't want that bolt sitting there without the fishing rod on it, I can just use the wrench, pull out its rig that holds the rod, and just throw the original bolt back in, you know, if that's important to you. Anyway, I'm getting up close to the 6-minute mark on this, so I'm going to let y'all go. I'm off-grid amateur. I used to be. Now I'm Amicus fire pits. I build those smokeless fire pits and ship them all over the continental U.S. Maybe I'll throw a link in the description on my Etsy shop in there too, so you can check those out. Anyway, thanks for watching.